Hello, Rooted Podcasters. It's me, Pamela Benson Owens. I am freaking out right now because I understand now that you can see me. And let's be clear. The most times when I do this podcast, I am busted up with my PJs on and my head wrap on, and I'm sitting at my desk with some really strong coffee. But lo and behold, my executive director of all things, my brand, my daughter Allison, said, "Mom, it's time. We got to make this visual." To that I say, hell no. But as you can tell, I lost that fight. So here we are. What I will tell you is as we continue to do this, it'll probably change and we might have a set. But right now, I just wanted to come raw, real, and as me. I'm sitting on my back porch where often you will see me take a picture where I sit in the morning at 4 a.m. and just gather myself. I wanted it to start here because this is my happy and sacred space. And so I invite you into it. It ain't fancy, but it's mine. And I'm going to give this a whirl. I appreciate your patience as I figure this out. Again, I'm coming kicking and screaming to this space. Today on Rooted, we are exploring this concept of assumed constraints. Again, assumed constraints. There are absolute seasons when you have to go into silence and go into straight hustle mode. And I think that's where I am. Why? Because the forces that are around you can get you off kilter and off base. You look up and you don't resemble yourself. And you are dwelling in the space of what is not possible. But when you focus on what is really true, it absolutely focuses you on the possibilities. It makes you hone your purpose. And it makes you move from panic to possibility. And it helps you get out of your own damn head about what you cannot do. The assumed constraints. And it helps you figure out your way forward without a lot of distraction, opinion, expectation of other people. An assumed constraint is defined as an assumption you've made about what you cannot do, don't have access to, can't or won't accomplish. Assumed constraints are ruthless as hell. And when this type of thinking takes hold, it removes the ability to identify what is an assumption and what is actually a real constraint. Assumed constraints often center around assumptions about what we don't have time to do, how we can't have influence without a certain title, or we don't have access to a comfortable lifestyle, whatever it is. And it's dangerous because once you lean into an assumed constraint, the more you believe you can't actually grow or thrive or change. Are you bound by assumed constraints? It can look and sound like you're assuming you can't get a new job. You're assuming you can't write a book or start a podcast. You're assuming that you can't go back and finish that degree or get a certification or start a business or travel the world. You assume that you can't walk away from that friend group that's only built on longevity or leave that relationship that no longer serves or feeds you. Have you done an inventory about the assumed constraints that you are allowing to hold you captive? I've been in that space. It took me 10 years to write my first book because of assumed constraints. It took my business coach almost as long to convince me that I had something to say. And I will tell you that I often check in on assumed constraints because this world is so busy and distracted. It steeps itself in comparison. And so you can find yourself thinking you can't actually do or lift anything. get let go from a job, laid off or fired, you will shame spiral so far you won't recognize yourself. It takes a certain level of consciousness to realize and call it out of its name, assumed constraints. So I hope that you will lean in and question yourself about, am I assuming constraints that really aren't there? I bet you are. And then what would it look like if you absolutely saturated yourself, dwelled in possibility? Sometimes the people around you believe in you more than you do, but that won't sustain you. I want you to call out your assumed constraints and get rid of them. And I want you to start betting on you. Assume constraints. Do some inventory and think about what those are and call those suckers out. It's a wrap. My first ever visual podcast. Rooted Podcasters, thanks for tuning in. Until next time. Rooted Podcasters, thanks for tuning in and getting real, raw, and rooted with me.